I think the fact is that Democrats got out there with the most coherent effort we've seen in a long time. There's more to be done. It's quite clear. But the Buffalo race is an indication of when you have a clear progressive message and you have, if not resource parity, something like it, it proves what Democrats can achieve.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. That was Mayor de Blasio trying to remain optimistic for Democrats after a tough election day for his party. The mayor downplayed the loss of state Senate control while focusing on one positive outcome in a Western New York State Senate race, positive for the Democrats, that is. Meanwhile, President Obama took a different approach by accepting blame for the Democrats' losses in the U.S. Senate and a number of state houses. Obama says that his administration failed to communicate the benefits of his policies. We've got four top political strategists here to talk about all of this and more. Republican consultants Kellyanne Conway and Bill O'Reilly, and Democrats Liz Smith and George Arzt. Thank you all for joining us. And we asked you to grade how the state Democrats did on election night. And you guys are some tough graders. We'll start with you, Kellyanne.
That would be a D. I was feeling charitable. And I don't think you can really perfume the pig, as they say in the South, in this circumstance. They lost the state Senate. And I think the larger problem for the Democratic Party in this state now is who's really their leader? Is this the party of Bill de Blasio, who thinks that a more progressive message and money to match is the future of the Democratic Party here and elsewhere? Is it the party of Barack Obama? Probably not. And Andrew Cuomo, of course, has alienated independents and conservative Democrats by playing Hamlet on hydraulic fracturing, by having stronger gun control laws, by being obsessed with, quote, gender equality, when we know from Gender Equity Day last spring that the White House pays its women far less than it pays its men. So the question really for the Democrats in this state are, you're the majority party, but who's really your leader? What is your philosophy? And I think that's an important question moving forward. It's why I gave them a D. Their losses were significant. They could not unseat some of these Republican challengers and Republican incumbents. And may I say, Dan Maffei, he lost by 20 points in a district that President Obama carried by 16. I think that tells you something about the Democratic Party.
Pretty gloomy outlook, Liz.
Yeah. Well, I actually gave him a C because we did keep the crown jewel of the governor's office with Governor Cuomo's victory. But there's no sugarcoating it. It was an absolute bloodbath in the state Senate, bloodbath in terms of congressional races. I mean, I think Kellyanne highlighted how shocking the Maffei loss was. I think this is a big blow to progressives in New York. I think that the Working Families Party looks largely irrelevant now, and I think that any Democrats or progressives who are hoping to get through a DREAM Act, driver's licenses for undocumented immigrants, new voting rights, or minimum wage over the next few years are straight out of luck.
Now, interestingly, the executive director of the Working Families Party, Bill Lipton, basically issued a rather caustic statement attacking their candidate, Andrew Cuomo, for not helping out on the state Senate races.
Well, you know, I kind of saw that as a sore loser statement. Andrew Cuomo played the Working Families Party like a fiddle. And Andrew Cuomo really got everything that he wanted out of this election. I think he's really the big winner. And his political calculations paid off.
Bill.
I gave a C-. I would have done a C also because you have to acknowledge that the Democrats retain all the statewide seats. I mean, there's nothing to sneeze at there. I think in losing House seats in the state Senate, that was a pretty big loss. But I went C- because of, Liz, what you're saying is that there's a growing schism in the Democratic Party in New York State. It's the progressive wing versus the Cuomo wing, if you'll call it that. But there's real problems, and the direction now is not pointing well for Democrats here. But that's what happens when you have any party that's been in power for some time. You begin to get divisions. Republicans have been through it. We tend to be getting back together in New York, and I think Democrats are in for a difficult next few years.
Now, until fairly recently, you were rather publicly quite caustic about Ed Cox and the state party's leadership and how they were managing the campaign. Did the candidates rescue it, or did the party get its act together?
I've actually been fine on Chairman Cox. I mean, Ed's had a very good run as chairman. He's picked up a number of congressional seats and a lot of county seats, has the state Senate majority back. I've been very critical of the state Senate majority that I didn't think stood for much, and I think that they were too cozy with Governor Cuomo. I hope now that they have the majority back that they'll lead as Republicans and not just try to survive election. I think too many people are just trying to stay as incumbents.
One theory I heard is that the state Senate will in fact work with the Independent Democratic Conference or otherwise try to make some accommodations, since in 24 months we're going to go through this all over again, and it'll be a presidential year in which Democratic turnout tends to be much higher.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it's good to have some kind of core in the middle that can actually accomplish things and do things to get New York back from where it is. I mean, we are the highest tax state in America. We do have the worst economic outlook in America. We rank 50th in that. We need to do real things to get the state moving. So if you can get a coalition together that will govern and take real steps to make the state better, I think that'll be great.
George, Arzt has seen a number of different election cycles. What did you think of this one for the Democrats?
I think I gave the Senate, because of the Senate, I gave the Democrats a C-, also because they haven't invigorated their base. This was a particularly lethargic election, not only nationally, but certainly among the Democrats. The low turnout shows that they can't get their message out. They can't compel people to go to the polls. I think something has to be done. Particularly among in the minority community and the rural whites as well. They're just not getting out there. They're just there's no way that the Democrats can win in 2016 unless they get their act together.
So something about that I didn't quite understand was that, I mean, if you're talking about, like, say, Central Brooklyn, Central Harlem, Southeast Queens,
Yeah.
I was expecting, the inevitable robocall from the president saying, hey, go out there and vote. And it never came. I mean, is that sort of what you're talking about?
That's part of it. Also, everyone has to work together in a Democrat. If you're on the Democratic ticket, even if you hate each other, you're going down the line, you should be working together. And that really hasn't happened in New York. There's so many tensions, not only progressive and centrist, but there are so many divisions, so many turf-oriented things in Central Brooklyn. There are many tensions
yes, indeed.
there. So people have to start working together if they want to really have gains in 2016.
And can I just say one thing about that? I mean, I disagree just slightly, because I do think that Democrats can win. I mean, it was 2 years ago that we had a historic presidential race. We picked up seats when people thought we would lose seats in the U.S. Senate. We won because we ran on an overarching economic message, one that addressed people's anxieties about middle-class wages being stagnant. Yes, we also did talk about birth control and a woman's right to choose and immigration and other issues, but we didn't run campaigns solely on social issues. I think that we should continue to talk about them, but they need to be in a targeted way, and Democrats need to put forward an affirmative vision that addresses Americans' anxiety.
Well, to that point, if you can tell me what the Democratic message was on the economy this time, I'd like to know. I missed it completely, and that's a serious point. This one-note narrowcasting, particularly to women, thankfully women found it to be insulting here and elsewhere, particularly elsewhere. Women want to be talked to about all of the issues about which they care. And it also doesn't seem that President Obama was very generous with the entire technology, ground game, email, money, benevolence. And if he's going to be the leader of the party here and elsewhere, then I think they're going to have to hold him to account. They didn't want him to do the robocalls and campaign within this time, but where was he? Where was he behind the scenes? And listen, George, if you want the Democratic Party to reach out to rural voters, and then what's all this gun control stuff? What's the SAFE Act? If you want them to reach out to minorities, get them to turn out, then why is Bill de Blasio, who fancies himself some kind of political savant, which is funny, why is he evicting Black and Hispanic students from the charter schools? I mean, what would be the incentive for minority voters to show up?
In our last couple of minutes, let's talk national politics for just a minute. We heard from Congressman Jeffries a little while ago. I know that you work on some national campaigns. I know you work on some national campaigns. What's the outlook? What's the prospect for the next 2 years with Republican control of Congress? Will they, as the pundits seem to think, put some legislation together that can actually pass, or are they going to go in a different direction?
They have to govern.
Yeah, I think they have. I think they get Keystone. I think Keystone's one that can be accomplished. I think they even find some type of agreement on the immigration issue with President Obama, and I think they try and put in a balanced budget, which is essential, but it's not necessarily politically popular when you start talking about Medicare or Medicaid changes. But I think the Republicans have to stay true to that. I think they can govern and do well and accomplish some things.
I think they're going to win in 2016 because they will govern. People will see things done. Harry Reid's been a tremendous liability for the Democratic Party and for the Obama presidency. evidenced by the fact that President Obama, I guess, ignored him at the lunch last week. And the fact is, over hundreds and hundreds of bills have passed the House of Representatives. They go to the Senate to die. This time, they'll actually reach the president's desk. He'll be in a better position.
And he'll have legacy
concerns,
concerns, so he'll have an incentive to sign some of them at least.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I think the president is going to try to make a good faith, effort to work with Mitch McConnell, but I'm skeptical about immigration, and I think that the Republicans will be committing political suicide for 2016 if they don't act. But I think it's incredibly important that the president act on immigration. I think his failure to act on deportations before this cycle had adverse effects in races like in Florida, where Charlie Crist lost by 1%.
But should he act on his own? He's threatening this executive amnesty, which I think he's the last guy in Washington, Liz, who realizes that the public doesn't want that. 74% are against him acting alone. They want him to work with Congress.
You know what? It's an issue that where someone needs to lead, and if he has to be the one to do it, then he has to be.
Okay, that is going to be the last word. Thank you so much for a great conversation. We are going to take a short break now. I'll be back in a minute with a preview of tomorrow night's program. Stay with us.